It started with something small. A box, sitting on the sidewalk just outside my driveway. No label, no markings, no address. Just a simple, square package. The kind you'd expect to find delivered to a doorstep, except it wasn't mine. And no one else on the street seemed to claim it either. I should have left it alone. I should have ignored the way it seemed placed rather than dropped, how it sat there, waiting. Instead, I picked it up. And from that moment on, my life was no longer mine. I live in Willow Creek. The kind of suburban neighborhood where every house looks like a variation of the next, manicured lawns, two-car garages, porch lights flicking on at dusk like fireflies. It's quiet. Predictable. Safe. That's why the box felt so out of place. It was a plain, brown cardboard cube, sealed with a single strip of packing tape. I found it on my way back from work. Just sitting there at the edge of my driveway, close enough to be mine but not quite. I looked around, but the street was empty. Porch lights glowed warmly in the early evening dim. The sky painted in soft hues of orange and violet. I hesitated. Maybe it was a missed delivery for a neighbor. But there was no shipping label, no markings, just the box. I bent down and lifted it. Lighter than I expected. A soft shifting sound inside, like something wrapped in cloth. A small thrill of unease crept up my spine, but I shook it off. It was just a package. Just a misplaced delivery. That's what I told myself as I carried it inside. I had no idea what I had just let into my home. I placed the box on the kitchen counter. The overhead lights buzzing faintly. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator, the distant murmur of a TV playing in the neighbor's living room through the walls. I should have left it alone. But something about it nagged at me. It felt personal, though I had no reason to believe it was meant for me. I grabbed a knife and slid the blade carefully under the tape, peeling it back. The flaps popped open with a soft sigh of released air. Inside, something lay wrapped in an old, yellowed cloth. I frowned and lifted it out. The fabric was soft but brittle, like it had been sitting in a damp attic for years. Dusty, moth-eaten at the edges. Beneath it, something small and hard. I unwrapped it carefully, my fingers brushing against cold, smooth metal. It was a locket. Oval-shaped, tarnished silver, etched with delicate floral engravings. It looked old, Victorian, maybe. The clasp was rusted, the chain snapped and coiled at the bottom of the box like a dead thing. A faint, sickly scent drifted up from it, like something long forgotten. I swallowed. My fingers trembled slightly as I pried the locket open. Inside was a photograph. A black and white portrait of a woman. She was young, with delicate features and dark, hollow eyes that stared directly at the camera. Her face was expressionless, no smile, no warmth. Just a blank, eerie stillness. Something about the photo unsettled me. The more I stared, the more something felt off. Her eyes. They weren't just looking at the camera. They were looking at me. I snapped the locket shut. My pulse pounded against my ribs. The room suddenly felt too quiet. The air too heavy. I let out a shaky breath and forced a laugh. It was just an old locket. Just a strange photo. Probably an antique someone had discarded. But then, a thought struck me, one that sent a cold tendril of unease curling in my gut. Who would throw something like this away? And why did it feel like it had been left for me? That night, I dreamt of the woman in the locket. I saw her standing at the foot of my bed, her dark eyes locked onto mine, her mouth slightly open like she was whispering something, but there was no sound. I woke up with a start, my skin damp with sweat. The clock on my nightstand glowed 3:12 a.m. My bedroom was silent, the only noise the faint rustling of tree branches against the window. Then I heard it. A whisper. Faint. almost imperceptible. Coming from inside my room. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. My eyes darted to the darkness beyond the bed, my ears straining. Nothing. The air felt thick, pressing in around me. I reached for my phone, turning on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing nothing. Just my dresser, my desk. My slightly ajar closet door. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. Just my mind playing tricks on me. Just a dream lingering in the edges of my consciousness. Then I saw it. The locket. It was on my nightstand. I hadn't put it there. My chest tightened. My hands felt cold. I had left it in the kitchen. Hadn't I? I reached for it hesitantly, my fingers brushing the cold metal. The second I touched it, the whispering started again. This time, it was right in my ear. A voice, not quite male, not quite female. Low. Breathless. Take me back. I dropped the locket with a sharp gasp, my body jolting as if I'd been shocked. The whispering stopped. Silence. Heavy. Crushing. I swallowed hard, my heart hammering. I was awake. I was awake. And I was no longer alone. Morning came too quickly. The whisper still echoed in the back of my mind as I got ready for work. The locket sat exactly where I'd left it on the nightstand, unmoving. Ordinary. But it wasn't ordinary. Not anymore. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was looking at me. Even as I brushed my teeth, packed my bag, stepped out into the crisp suburban morning. The sensation clung to me like static electricity. The houses lining the street looked the same as always, neatly trimmed lawns, cars warming up in driveways, neighbors on their usual routines. Mrs. Carson walked her dog. The miller's teenage son slouched at the bus stop, staring at his phone. Everything was normal. Except for one thing. Across the street, standing perfectly still on the sidewalk, was a woman. Dressed in gray, dark hair hanging limp around her pale face. She wasn't moving. Wasn't looking around. Just staring at me. A chill licked up my spine. I blinked. She was gone. I sucked in a breath, my heart thudding. No way. I had just seen her. Hadn't I? I turned in a slow circle, scanning the street. No sign of her. Just the usual flow of neighbors getting on with their day. A hallucination. A trick of the light. I shook myself. I need sleep. And yet, even as I drove to work, the feeling lingered. Somewhere. Unseen, something was still watching me. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't keeping the locket. After work, I drove to the nearest antique store, hoping someone there could take it off my hands. A small bell jingled as I stepped inside, the shop packed with dusty shelves and the scent of aged wood. A woman at the counter glanced up. She was in her 60s, sharp-eyed. Her graying hair pulled into a tight bun. Help you with something? I pulled the locket from my pocket and placed it on the counter. Her expression changed immediately. The color drained from her face. Her lips thinned. She stepped back, just slightly, but enough for me to notice. Where did you get this? I hesitated. I found it. She didn't take her eyes off it. You need to leave. A chill settled in my stomach. Excuse me. She inhaled slowly, carefully. Her voice was quieter now. Take it away. Please. I frowned. Do you know what it is? A muscle in her jaw twitched. It doesn't belong to you. And if you keep it, it never will. Goosebumps prickled up my arms. Someone whispered to me last night, I said before I could stop myself. They said, take me back. Does that mean anything to you? Her eyes darted to mine. Then, very softly, she murmured, "It's already chosen you." My stomach dropped. Before I could ask anything else, she turned and disappeared into the back of the shop, leaving me alone with the locket. I tried to get rid of it another way. I left the locket at a bus stop. Just walked up, set it down on the bench, and left. Didn't look back. That night, I slept better. For the first time in days, I didn't wake up at 3:12 a.m. No whispering. No shadows lurking in the dark corners of my room. Until I went to make coffee in the morning. And there, sitting on my kitchen counter, was the locket. Exactly where I had left it 2 days ago. I stared at it. My hands turned ice cold. No. No, no. No. I grabbed it and ran outside, breathing hard. The morning air was sharp in my lungs. I threw the locket into the storm drain at the end of the street, hearing the metallic plink as it vanished into the darkness. I forced myself to breathe. It was gone. I told myself that again and again. It was gone. That night, at exactly 3:12 a.m., I woke up. My body was stiff. My breath shallow. And I felt it. The heavy, suffocating presence in the room. I turned my head slowly. There, in the corner of my bedroom, stood the woman from the locket's photograph. Her eyes were black pits. Her mouth was moving, whispering something soundless. And in her hands, dangling from its broken chain, the locket. I couldn't move. My body felt weighted, frozen under the crushing presence filling the room. My breath came in short, shallow bursts, my pulse hammering against my ribs. The woman stood in the corner, motionless, watching. The locket dangled from her fingers, gently swaying, though there was no breeze. Her lips moved, whispering something without sound. And then, her head snapped toward me. Not turned. Snapped. Like a puppet whose strings had been yanked, her entire face jerked in my direction, her mouth stretching open into a silent, gaping void. A noise, low and wet, bubbled from her throat, not a whisper this time, but something, closer. A sound I felt inside my skull. I tore my gaze away, my body jolting into motion. I lunged for the lamp on my nightstand, fumbling in blind panic, and switched it on. The room flooded with light. She was gone. The corner stood empty. The air was still. But the locket. The locket was back on my nightstand. Exactly where it had been before. Waiting. I didn't sleep. I didn't touch the locket. I didn't look at it. Instead, I spent the next day at work, gripping my coffee cup like a lifeline, barely hearing my coworkers as they talked around me. I told myself it was stress, exhaustion. But then, things started changing. Small things, at first. Like how my reflection in the bathroom mirror looked just a second too late when I moved. Or how my phone screen glitched whenever I tried to call someone. Or how my apartment smelled wrong. Faintly. Just slightly. Like damp earth and decaying flowers. I convinced myself it was my imagination. Until I walked past a coworker's desk and she said, "You look different." I stopped. What? She frowned, tilting her head. I don't know. Something's off. You okay? I forced a laugh. Just tired. She hesitated. Your eyes look darker. A cold, crawling sensation prickled up my neck. I laughed it off again, muttered something about bad sleep, and walked away. But in the reflection of the office window, I caught a glimpse of myself. For just a fraction of a second, I saw someone else standing behind me. That night, I locked the locket in my desk drawer. I wasn't touching it again. But at 3:12 a.m., I woke up. Not to whispers this time. To knocking. A slow, deliberate knock at my bedroom door. I stared at it, my entire body locking up. It was coming from inside the apartment. From the hallway. The knock came again. Knock. 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 Shallow breaths rasped through my throat. I reached for my phone, but it was dead. I hadn't heard my front door open. No one else was supposed to be here. The knock came again. Louder. I sat up, every inch of me rigid, my ears straining. And then. A voice. Not a whisper. Not distant. Right. Outside. My door. Let me in. I stayed awake until sunrise. I didn't move. Didn't open the door. When morning came, the apartment was silent. Normal. But I wasn't. The changes were getting worse. My reflection moved wrong. Just slightly. My voice, when I spoke, sounded off-pitch. Like an echo of itself. And then, I looked down at my hands. And I saw dirt under my fingernails. Deep. Packed in. As if I had been digging. Except I hadn't. Had I? Panic surged up my throat. I scrubbed at my hands in the sink, but the dirt clung, staining my skin like ink. And then, when I looked up, my reflection smiled. But I hadn't. I couldn't escape it anymore. The locket was in every corner of my life. I started finding it in places it shouldn't be. Not on the nightstand. Not in my desk drawer. Everywhere. One morning. It was in my jacket pocket, the cold metal pressing against my chest when I went to grab my keys. I didn't remember putting it there. Another time, I found it on the coffee table. Right beside my empty cup, the chain tangled in a way I couldn't have done. It was almost like it was following me. Like it had somehow attached itself to me. And with each encounter, I felt more distant from myself. My reflection wasn't mine anymore. The eyes were wrong. They weren't even my eyes, they were darker. Hollow. It wasn't just the mirror. It was when I spoke, too. My voice was a little too slow, a little too drawn out. Like I was speaking in someone else's skin. That night, I thought I could sleep. I thought if I closed my eyes, maybe it would be the first peaceful night in weeks. But at 3:12 a.m., I woke up again. The room was cold. Not from the air, but from something unseen. Something that didn't belong. And then I heard it. A soft, scraping sound. From the closet. I sat up in bed, my pulse pounding. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The scraping continued, slow and deliberate, like something was trying to pull itself free. I reached for the light on my nightstand, but it was dead. Not a flicker. Just blackness. The scraping stopped. And then, a whisper. I'm here. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't words. It was inside my head. Like a presence, not a sound. I couldn't move. My body refused to respond. And then, something reached for me. I felt it. Cold. Icy fingers brushing my ankle. I screamed. Yanking my feet back, but the fingers followed. They crawled up my leg, and in the dark, I heard the sound of dirt shifting, wet, slithering. My heart was hammering. I scrambled out of bed. My knees hitting the floor. I slammed the closet door open. There was nothing inside. Just darkness. The kind that wasn't right. And then, when I turned, I saw her again. The woman. Standing in the doorway. Her eyes were wide. Unblinking. I couldn't breathe. She wasn't real. She wasn't. She moved closer. I backed away, but my body wouldn't listen. It wouldn't move. Her fingers, long and blackened, reached for me. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. I couldn't scream. I couldn't run. Her fingers grazed my skin. Cold. Too cold. And then, in a voice that was more like a feeling than words, she whispered, "You let me in." I couldn't look at anyone anymore. The people I worked with, my friends, they felt like strangers. I couldn't remember the last time I had a conversation with them that felt real. I'd catch glimpses of them out of the corner of my eye, and their faces would flicker. Change. 1 minute. They were smiling, the next, they weren't. I tried talking to Karen, my best friend from work. She looked at me with concern, but the look didn't feel right. "You've been different lately. Are you okay?" she asked, leaning across the table. I looked at her face. It was her face, but it wasn't. Her eyes, dark, hollow, like the woman's eyes from the locket. I recoiled. "Karen." I whispered, unable to keep the tremor from my voice. She blinked, confusion flickering in her gaze. "What's wrong with you?" The words were wrong. The tone was wrong. The way she moved, it was wrong. I stood up too quickly. I need to go." I didn't wait for a response. I didn't want to hear her say anything else. I locked myself in the bathroom, staring at the reflection. The woman. Her face. Her face was mine. But the eyes, her eyes, they were the same. The same black voids. Hollow. I touched my face. My fingers shook as they traced the sharp lines of my jaw, my brow, the familiar curve of my lips. But it wasn't mine. I could feel it. I could feel the shift in the way I moved. The reflection wasn't me anymore. It was a stranger. I backed away. My breathing became shallow, frantic. I didn't belong here. None of this was real. The locket was gone. It had to be. I was still me. I wasn't like them. I couldn't be. I turned to leave the bathroom, but in the mirror, she was standing behind me. The woman. Her face too close to mine. Her breath cold against my neck. Her eyes not mine. Her mouth stretched, like it was trying to speak, but it was wrong, wrong words, wrong sounds. I couldn't move. Her lips parted. "I am you." I stood at the edge of the street, the night stretching out before me. Everything was still, but the air felt wrong, too thick, too heavy. I wanted to run. But I couldn't. The locket was gone. I had to get rid of it. It had been buried. It had been thrown away. It had been lost. I started walking. The path ahead of me seemed endless. I couldn't see the end. It wasn't the neighborhood anymore. It wasn't my life. And then, just as I turned the corner, as I tried to escape, I saw it. The woman. Her eyes were mine. The locket hung from her neck. And she smiled. The world moved on without me. Or at least, it tried to. My desk at work sat empty for 2 days before someone finally asked, "Has anyone seen them?" Karen tried texting me. No response. By the 4th day, she stopped by my apartment. My car was still in the lot. The lights were off. Everything was silent. The landlord let her in. The air inside was stale. A thin layer of dust had already begun to settle, as if I had been gone for weeks instead of days. But the strangest part was the mirror. Karen didn't notice at first, but when she walked past it, something made her stop. A chill swept over her. She turned back, staring at her reflection. For a second, just a brief, terrible second, it wasn't her staring back. It was me. But my face was wrong. The expression, empty, the eyes black and voids, something whispering behind them. Karen stumbled back, her breath catching in her throat. Then, blink, it was just her again. Just an ordinary mirror. She left the apartment quickly, locking the door behind her. She told herself it was stress. That she was just imagining things. That night, she dreamed of me. I stood at the foot of her bed. My mouth moving in a silent whisper. She couldn't hear the words. But she could feel them. Inside her head. Let me in. The locket resurfaced 3 weeks later. A young woman, Anna, found it at a thrift store. She didn't remember picking it up. Didn't remember buying it. But when she got home, there it was, resting on her dresser. She frowned. Had she been carrying it all this time? She picked it up, running her fingers over the delicate, tarnished metal. It felt cold. Too cold. And then, she heard it. A whisper. Soft. Familiar. Coming from inside the locket. She hesitated. Then, slowly, she pried it open. Inside was a black and white photograph. A portrait of someone who looked strangely familiar. She leaned in closer. Squinting at the image. The woman in the photo had dark eyes. Hollow. Watching. The more Anna stared, the more she swore, the woman was smiling. The locket always returns. It waits. It chooses. It feeds. And once you've touched it, once you've let it in, you are never truly gone. Not entirely. Just waiting. For the next keeper. Watching.